Now, our next speaker, Sheikh Rida Jishi, is actually our keynote speaker for today. Sheikh Rida is a student of Islamic studies and has served the Ahlul Bayt community of Cambridge since 2015 and the Muslim community of Milton Keynes as of this year. His activities involved community leadership, Islamic education for children and the youth, and lecturing at different Islamic centers. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sheikh Rida with a loud salawat.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the most merciful towards all His creation, and the especially merciful towards the believers. All praise and thanks are due to God, the Lord of all the creation. May His peace and blessings be upon the Holy Prophet Muhammad. Allahumma salli. His pure family and His loyal companions. My dear sisters, my dear brothers, esteemed scholars, our dear hosts, and our beloved guests. Peace be with you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I'd of course first like to thank our hosts today for enabling this very beautiful event. In this short time we're learning so much about each other, and to be honest with you, every time I would be listening to every person speaking on this stage, I would think, oh God, I know something from the Quran that actually agrees with this. I know something from our traditions that agrees with that. It tells us how much in common we have. And not only that we all care about the same thing and that we all have the same goal. We all are after the truth. In the Quran, we believe that God said, and if He wanted, He would have made you one nation. It would have been so easy for God. But He didn't. And in fact, He intended that we are different. The beautiful verse of the Quran that our dear brother started with today, it clarified that. It said that God actually made us of male and female and of different tribes and nations for a reason. And that is that we may know one another, that we may learn about each other, because otherwise life would be boring, trust me. So that we see perfections in others and learn from them. We see gaps in ourselves and we try to fill them. So that we behave as mirrors for each other. You know, you look at the mirror and you see your deficiencies, your imperfections. That's how all of us here should be for every other person. Yes? This is what I thought to start with. What I will talk about now, and may God help you with your patience with me, is a point that my dear Dr. Dayman mentioned, sustainability, right? I will go from an Islamic traditional point of view on that. And you will see that in my talk I will touch upon points that I'm pretty sure everyone will agree on. I will refer to Islamic traditions. You know, the Quran in multiple places commands us not to go to excess, not to cross the limits with everything that we deal with, not to exceed the limits, not to go to extravagance. Quran chapter 7 verse 31 says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن المبذرين كانوا إخوان الشياطين وكان الشيطان لربه كفورا. English, indeed, the wasteful are the brothers of the devils. And ever has the devil been ungrateful to his Lord. Quran chapter 7 verse 31 says, وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا وَلَا تُسْرِفُوا إِنَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُسْرِفِينَ. And eat and drink, but do not go to excesses, for He, God, does not like those who go to excess. Going to excess or squandering, extravagance, is a form of injustice in its essence. If we define justice as giving everyone their due right, or putting everything in its right place, then surely when you go to excess, when you consume beyond what you need, you're obviously doing injustice somewhere. Not just to yourself, not just to the environment. You're doing injustice to your Lord who entrusted all these blessings around you, your hands, so that you treat that, what we call amana, that trust, so that you show that you're trustworthy towards this blessing. You spend it in the right time, you spend it in the right place. You don't go to any excess. For example, if I treat myself into a massive platter of food, and I eat one part, and I stuff myself with the second part, and I throw away the third part, what did I do here? The first part, yes, I did justice. I lifted my hunger. I needed that food. God wants us to live a dignified life. That's our nature. But with the second part that you stuffed yourself with, or the third part that ended it up in the bin, what did you do there? Was there not someone close to you or far from you who might have needed that? Should I have not been more responsible in dealing with it? Maybe someone in my progeny later might need it. So, Islam, the teachings of Islam warned against extravagance, against this exaggeration or exceeding the limits, to the extent that it prohibited using more water than you need or going into extravagance with the water that you are performing ablution with, ablution for prayers. And in Islamic traditions, prayers is a pillar of the faith. It's a very important thing. It's a very important duty that the Muslims believe they have towards God. It's very essential. And you're required to perform ablution. Why am I saying this? I'm referring to a tradition that goes back to our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is narrated that the Prophet was passing by a companion of his by the name of Sa'd. He was performing ablution, obviously, for prayers. And the Prophet exclaimed, he said, "O Sa'd, what is this extravagance?" And Sa'd said, "O Prophet of God, is there extravagance in ablution?" The Prophet said, "Yes, there is extravagance in ablution. Even if you were by the shore of a flowing river, even if you were by a flowing river, you might think that, so what if I use more water than I need to perform ablution? The water is running, there's plenty." But no, the Prophet here is obviously teaching this person that it is not about whether, how much water there is. And we think that water is infinite. It is not. Let's assume it is. But it is also about your attitude. Where does this sense of entitlement come from? Isn't it rooted in greed? Isn't this action of excess, extravagance, isn't it rooted in greed, in some sense of entitlement that we feel about ourselves? I'm entitled to consume as much resources as I want. When we look at history and we see these tyrannical rulers, we read about many of them. In the Abrahamic traditions, we read about the Pharaoh who was very arrogant, that he would claim that he was the lord of the people. Or Yazid, who performed the atrocities against our Imam Hussain, whom we're commemorating these days. These people, how did they become like this? Was it overnight? Or did it not start with this sense of entitlement? Maybe at the dining table, maybe at the bedroom. That sense of entitlement grew. At some point in time, it resulted in these kind of characters. That is something that I find very important to remember myself and to remind everyone here. This story that I just narrated from the Holy Prophet, does it not tell us that we need to act responsibly, sustainably? We need to treat the resources around us with sustainability, with justice? Does it not teach us that we should not have an attitude of trying to exploit everything around us, extract as much gain as we want at the expense of sustainability, leaving something for the future? It is not about leaving something for the future, even if it is about the health of the system itself. I will mention a very beautiful tradition from Imam Ali, son of Abu Talib. who was the successor of our Prophet Muhammad. This person was a very iconic person and figure in history. When he was leading the Muslim world, he had a governor appointed to Egypt. And he sent him a letter on how to govern. And that letter is an absolute masterpiece of Islamic ethical politics, or political ethics, let me say. I'll quote a part of that. What Ali is telling his governor, Malik al-Ashtar. What does he say? Let your focus be on developing the land more than your focus be on extracting taxation from the crops. Because the crops would not remain with this kind of attitude. The Imam continues, and whoever seeks collecting taxation from the land without its development would be ruining the land, destroying the people, and his rule and authority would not last but for very, very short. Absolutely powerful. Pushing us to think thoughtfully, moderately about the resources around us. As I said, I mentioned greed. One side of the coin of the greed is when you want things for yourself, and the other side of the same coin is when you deprive it other people or someone else. And in fact, they're very related to each other. And these are things that we see in history, sometimes dark episodes in history. I'll mention also a story from this very Ali, Imam Ali, whom we're very proud to be followers of. There was a person who was opposing Ali, fighting Ali, by the name of Muawiyah, his name was. Muawiyah was a governor on Sham, and there was a war between the two. And they met somewhere next or close to the river Euphrates, modern day Iraq. The army of Muawiyah had control over the water in the beginning. And the army of Ali became weak and thirsty. And then Ali, because he was a very reasonable man of politics, he sent a delegation to Muawiyah reminding him, that's very inhumane what you're doing, right? You can't deny people water in your war. Muawiyah would not listen, and then the army of Ali attacked, and they gained access to water. But the ethics of Ali refused that they would treat the other people in the same way they were treated. No, they gave them access to water. We see a similar attitude that Ali's son, Hussain, whom we're commemorating the martyrdom of these days, facing a similar situation. Hussain initially had access to water, and he allowed it to his enemies, the enemies that were blocking his way towards his people in Kufa, in modern-day Iran. But later the enemy gained access, and they deprived him and his family and his companions of water, and he ended up being killed thirsty. Hussein's movement that we're commemorating these days, this Reformation movement, why did he move against the tyrannical Yazid? Wasn't it not because those people went into excess? Wasn't it because those people went into extravagance? And in fact, Hussein himself said it. Those people عطلوا الحدود, and they exceeded the limits, and they allowed themselves what should not be allowed, and they gave themselves privileges over the money of the public. So he thought he would rise to reform that situation, opposing those people who go to excess and extravagance. The people of excess and extravagance and wastefulness that I mentioned in history, we see that history remembers them with the label of shame. But those people who were dignified were the opposite, or those people who were the people of sacrifice, not greedy. Imam al-Baqir, our fifth Imam. So, in the Muslim world, there is a group, Sunni generally, if you want to describe them Sunni or Shia and Shia. In the Shia, there are the 12ers, those who believe in 12 Imams or 12 successors of the Prophet, and those are people of knowledge and whose responsibility was to explain the message to the people and spread it and teach the right teaching of the Prophet. So the fifth person, Imam al-Baqir, it is narrated that he said, وَاطْلُبْ بَقَاءَ الْعِزِّ بِإِمَاتَةِ الطَّمَعِ, and seek the subsistence of honor in the mortification of greed. If you want your honor to remain, you need to kill your greed. This gives you honor. My dear sisters, my dear brothers, we all are equally endowed with this responsibility of making sure that we deal with this planet sustainably, responsibly, that we make sure that we leave something for our children so that they can together live in peace, so that they can together get to know each other as we are sitting and standing today, getting to know about each other. I thank you all very much for your patience, and of course I would like to extend my and our deep condolences to my dear brother, the respected Reverend Ernesto, their community, the Christian community, for the atrocities that took place. And I indeed would like to reaffirm that your pain is indeed our pain, your joy is indeed our joy. Praise be to God. Thank you very much.